Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Northwest Corner podcast. My name is Ethan Lyles. Well, this is the Northwest Corner podcast, the newest premier podcast for the upstate of South Carolina, bringing you all the latest events, news, goings-on. But we're going to do something a little different with guests today. Usually we have like an artist or, somebody promoting some sort of event. We're just going to have a local this time.
Woohoo, that's me. I'm Shawn Kitchen. I'm the upstate's leading authority on damn Yankees.
How about that?
I was embedded with damn Yankees for 38 years.
And you grew up in
Kalamazoo,
Michigan. Go Broncos.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, we did. Well, so what brought you over this way to Spartanburg, South Carolina? Map your journey to Inman, South Carolina.
Mrs. Kitchen is part of it.
All right.
Okay, I met her 25 years ago. The story before that was that my parents divorced when I was a little kid.
Okay.
And my father lived here in Inman. He founded the Scuba Center of Inman. So as a little kid, I used to come down here in the summers.
Now, did y'all go up to Lake Jocassee?
Oh, we went everywhere. Yeah, I did my checkout dives up at Jocassee.
That's a deep lake.
Yeah, it is.
There's a cool town down there, too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I've dove to the top of the steeple of the church of that town.
Have you gone down? I heard people go down with like medicine balls and will play basketball in the old basketball hoop down there.
Yeah, I've heard all sorts of weird stories. It's
fun.
Easier to access now because the lake's about 20 feet lower than it used to be.
All right.
But back in the day when I would go diving there and it was at full pond, the top of the steeple was at 80 or 85 feet. So if you wanted to go all the way down to street level, you were past what they considered the sport diving limits.
Right, and you had to have a license.
Well, no, you didn't so much have to have a license, but when you're down that deep, you go through your air supply a lot faster, and you have to start calculating what they call decompression stops on the way up.
So you don't get the bends.
You can't go hang out at 130 feet.
And then just swim right back
go right straight back to the surface because you'll get the well, you won't explode, but you'll get the bends.
Which can kill. It can be deadly.
Well, yeah, it can. But mostly the decompression stops are about what they call off-gassing.
Isn't
you
it
need
just
to get
like
rid of the built-up nitrogen in your blood. Yeah, and that's all pretty dry stuff. It has to do with the partial pressures of different gases.
I haven't been scuba certified in a while, but I did mine down Charleston area, Wadmalaw Island, I think.
Oh, I'm an official member of the Cooper River Gator Club.
Oh, how about that? What does the Cooper River Gator Club do?
Well, the Cooper River down there by Charleston, half the day it's flowing out into the ocean, so it's fresh water, and the other half of the day when the tide comes in, it's salt water.
So you get that brackish.
Yeah. It's all very dark. It's really tannic because of the vegetable life growing along the shoreline. And it's so tannic, so dark, think iced tea, that the drink, not the wrapper, that
lemonade.
That you can't see but about 6 inches in front of your face. So, but what does exist along the bottom of the Cooper River is tons and tons of prehistoric shark teeth. And it's not really deep. It's only about 20 or 25 feet deep, if I recall. So what you do is you put tons of weight on your weight belt, get in the water with your buddy, who you're not going to see in 30 seconds anyways, and you just drop to the bottom, and you just sit there with a flashlight and with your mask right up against the gravel, and you just sit there and fish for shark teeth.
Did you ever find one of them big ones?
Oh, yeah.
The megalodon?
Oh, yeah. I found several of them. And then after you scope out that little area, that's 6 inches that you can see in front of you, just push yourself up a little bit, let the current carry you downstream a little bit. But they call it the Cooper River Gator Club because that whole area is heavily populated with alligators. So you're always listening for your dive master who's up on the pontoon boat with a big old sledgehammer. And if you start hearing bam, 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 bam on the side of the pontoons, that means get out of the water now. because he's watching the shoreline for all the gators that are out there sunbathing.
If anybody just sort of slides in.
Yeah, he's watching the gators that are out sunbathing on the shoreline, and if one of them gets in the water, he starts beating on the pontoons and everybody gets out.
I don't know if I'd ever feel comfortable swimming in like that section of the Cooper River.
I did it once just to say that I did it. And you're supposed to get a T-shirt.
Did you get a T-shirt?
I think I did, but that was 20 years ago, and I don't know whatever happened to the shirt. But I've dove the Cooper River. I'm an official Cooper River Gator Club member.
Well, that's kind of fun. I guess the only time I've really ever sort of swam in the Cooper River was out near Fort Sumter. Out kind of that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
So that was my first exposure to the upstate. And then in 1992, she's telling me two. I met Mrs. Kitchen. I was working at the dive shop during the day and working at what used to be the Fast Fair on Main Street in Inman.
The Fast Fair?
Yeah, used to be called a Fast Fair. Now it's a Hickory Point.
Okay.
But there was a lady there named Scotty Williams. I worked for her in the evenings on the closing shift, and one day this cute little long-haired brunette came in, and I said something to her, and she looked up and panicked and ran out the store, and I thought she actually robbed me blind. She ran out into the parking lot, and it was so odd. I said something to her, and she looked up, and eyes as big as dinner plates, and out the door she went. And it was so peculiar that, the next person came up and I said, hold on a minute. Did that lady just steal something? And I'm watching out the window and she's out in her car waving her arms all around like she's having some kind of epileptic seizure and yelling something at a person sitting in the passenger seat. And the person in the passenger seat gets out, walks in, gets a Coke and a Snickers bar, walks up, plops them on the counter, stares at me with dull eyes for a second, hands me some money, and turns around and walks back out. It was only years later that I found out that the person in the passenger seat was my now my sister-in-law. And apparently Mrs. Kitchen went out there, oh my God, you got to see this guy inside the Fast Fair. He's cute. I've never seen him before. I don't know who he is. You got to go in there and buy something. Sister walked in, took one look at me and just had a big and then turned around and walked out. Yeah, he's all right, I guess. And that just kind of set the tone for the nature of my relationship with my sister-in-law.
That's fantastic. That's beautiful. I love that story, everything about it. That's fantastic.
Yep, so the first time I met my wife, I thought she robbed me blind.
All right, well, that happens.
Yep.
That happens.
Yeah, I'm getting the stink eye from the peanut gallery.
All right. Well, okay, so that brought you to Inman. Did you go back to Michigan and live between the two?
Yeah, like I said, okay. I was embedded with a bunch of Yankees for 38 years.
You say it like you knew early on those weren't your people.
I never at any point in my life wanted to live in Michigan. For all the things that you hear people say about their hometown and missing their hometown, I never felt like Michigan was my home. And it's hand to God, honest truth. I never wanted to live there.
Not even the Upper Peninsula?
It's a nice place to visit, but you know how cold it is from about the third week of August until about the second week of May?
It gets chilly.
Yeah, there's there's a phrase about balls and brass monkeys or something like that.
So where'd you go to college?
Spring Arbor College,
Where's
now
that?
Spring Arbor University, in Spring Arbor, Michigan.
Okay, I know Ann Arbor. I don't know Spring Arbor.
Born and raised in Kalamazoo, and everybody knows where Detroit is. Kalamazoo's on the opposite side of the state from Detroit,
west,
off of I-94.
As west can go in Michigan.
Yeah, right halfway in between Kalamazoo and Detroit is the town of Jackson, Michigan.
Okay.
Mostly known for its very large maximum security state prison. And then right to the southwest of Jackson is a little town of Spring Arbor, and that's where the university is. And it's kind of like Hershey, Pennsylvania. If the college weren't there, Spring Arbor wouldn't have
It's
any
college
reason
town.
to exist. Yeah.
College town.
Yeah, it's pretty much a college and enough town to support it, you know.
Right.
The big news after I graduated even was they finally got a McDonald's. So, you know, welcome to 1978. Yay, Spring Arbor. It's a little known fact that due to career concerns, Mrs. Kitchen and I spent a year in Memphis, Tennessee.
How was Memphis? I hear different things about it.
Terrible.
Okay.
Didn't like it at all.
That's one of the different things.
We
I've heard
lived
about
about, just 3 or 4 miles from Graceland.
Did you see the ducks when they crossed the...
No, but we had a resident set of ducks in Kalamazoo that lived in the park across the street from Loy-Norrick's High School. Every morning, the ducks would all go from the park to the school. They'd all go to school in the morning. Seriously, everybody would have to stop in the road to let all the ducks cross, and there's, 50, 60 ducks.
Jesus.
They'd all go over to the school in the morning, and then when the school would let out, all the ducks would go back to the park at night.
Well, there's something like that in Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. There's like a hotel that's got like they march the ducks.
I couldn't tell you, but we just lived a few miles down the road from Graceland. Never went
to Graceland.
You realize it costs like $50 a person?
It's like,
I guess Priscilla and Lisa Marie need to make a living too.
Well,
but
his bowling alleys didn't do too well, so.
Well, and it's Memphis has changed since the 1960s.
No,
it's not really in the best part of town. We did find we went on a motorcycle ride one time, Mrs. Kitchen and me, and there was this one place just maybe a mile or so from our house out in the country. Big open field. I mean, it's. This is a plot of land that's a half a mile square. And there was this one weird looking, out of place, kind of looked like something you'd see lifted out of the desert Southwest. Kind of an adobe looking hotel kind of thing. But all abandoned, all emptied out and everything. And big perimeter fence around. And a couple times I thought about jumping the fence just because I wanted to go.
Did you?
Take a look. I thought about it. Never got around to it.
Huh.
But we came to find out that was one of Elvis's properties.
What do you do with it? A hotel or something?
No, he lived in it.
Oh.
When he wanted to... okay. Mrs. Kitchen's telling me it was his farm where he went on his honeymoon with Priscilla.
That's fine.
But, it's just all big perimeter fencing. A huge piece of land. Yeah, it cost, we figured out it was going to cost us about $200 to take the family out to Graceland. And that's if you wanted to guide yourself through. And if you don't mind getting out of here in about 45 minutes, that would be great.
If you think that's bad,
if you wanted the guided tour, it was going to cost you about $400.
Go to Biltmore. Especially around Christmas.
You remember that thing I told you where when everybody's going this way, I go that way? That's why I don't go to the Biltmore at Christmas. When I say go to Biltmore at Christmas,
I mean don't go to the Biltmore at Christmas. That's what I'm actually saying there.
I went to the Biltmore in like September on a Saturday at 3 in the afternoon and didn't care for it.
Go the week after Christmas. Because the lights are still up and everything's still pretty.
Gone.
Everybody's gone.
Everybody's tired of Christmas.
The prices have dropped and you can see all the pretty stuff. It's just, celebrate Christmas a week later.
I guess I've just enjoyed the Biltmore vicariously through the people who I know who have gone there and taken nice pictures, and because I've seen Hannibal.
That's a valid reason. I'll take that.
Well, remember that was shot
at
the Biltmore.
Yeah.
The rich dude who wanted Hannibal to die. That was his house. Was the Biltmore.
After college.
After college.
How did we get here? After college, where'd you go?
Well, Mrs. Kitchen and I married in 2001.
All right.
And 2002. And here I was about to say to you, we got married in 2001, and it's important that you remember when you get married, don't forget when your anniversary is because it'll make your wife upset. And there I just went and did it. We got married in 2002. The dates get muddled for me because we've known each other for 25 years. And it's just been wonderful. It's been bliss and perfection for 25 years. Actually, the honest truth, we didn't date at all. We were friends for 10 years before we decided to get married.
So y'all just Harry met Sally'd it? back to
for the
movies?
sake of trying to make a culturally relevant reference, yeah, I guess that's probably the
right.
best way to put it. We had known each other for 10 years before we decided to get married, and I'll tell you, and I get a lot of flack for this, so if you got any comments to make, keep them to yourself. This is great podcasting,
this is my
isn't it?
job
This
to
is
comment
great
on
radio.
whatever-
Yeah, this is
whatever you're
great
about to
radio.
say,
Keep your thoughts
I
to
have
yourself.
to say it.
Yeah. We didn't, at least in my mind. Now, Mrs. Kitchen might have some different views and perspectives on this, but from my perspective, we didn't get married because I had some ooey gooey, sappy little sense of, lovers running through the clover. I'm so in love kind of thing. I married Mrs. Kitchen because I knew in my head that it was the single smartest decision I could ever make with my life. And in the now 15 years, the end of this month, 15 years that we've been married, I have cultivated and nurtured a very great love for my wife. I have learned to love my wife. I love her more now than I ever have.
Well, that's good.
So that's a little bit of the backstory on that. We've known each other for 25 years and been married for 15. We lived in Michigan up until 2011. We wanted to get a start
We're in
close
Michigan.
to family. Kalamazoo. Were you here at the beginning of this podcast? Kalamazoo. And we moved down here in 2011. We both wanted to be down here for most of our marriage, but it just seemed like time and the confluence of events just never allowed it. And then one day, all the tumblers lined up, and the doors opened, and the clouds parted, and the little ray of light shone down, and a choir of angels went, ah! And little bluebirds tied my shoelaces, and I was offered a job down here, and we came, and here we are. So
That's
now
good.
I'm no longer embedded with the damn Yankees.
Good. We're glad to have you.
Yep.
Tell me about that motorcycle.
That motorcycle, this is good radio as he points out to the garage. 1980.
See where I'm pointing?
Yep.
Listen to that pointing.
That's quality radio right there. 1984 Honda Goldwing Aspencade. That's my love in life. Now, we've been sitting here yakking about movies like a couple of dummies. But you want to get me wound up about something, motorcycles.
Motorcycles.
That's where my life's passion is. And my
When did
big
that
thing
start?
is Grand Prix motorcycle racing.
When did this start?
Must have been about 9 years old, 10 years old.
Did you get like a little mini Indian motorcycle or something?
No, I had a 1977 Honda XR75 dirt
As a
bike.
9-year-old?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Oddly enough, my parents were okay with me having a dirt bike. Now, you got to understand, my dad is a motorcycle mechanic by trade.
So that was already kind of.
Yeah, he's been working on
There.
motorcycles since
This
Hildebrand and Wolfmueller built the very first motorcycle.
This wasn't like a.
Back in 1876 or something like that.
I like motorcycles, and you'd never really been exposed to them. Like they'd just always been around.
Oh, no. Yeah, they've always been a part of the family growing up. Had that XR75. Got it for $75. I remember that number. It was $75 of my own hard-earned money. And you know how long it takes to save $75 when you're like 10 years old?
When you're 10, $5 is a lot.
It takes a lot of time to save $75.
You can buy a lot of chewing gum with $5.
Yep,
Especially
exactly.
with $75.
And comic books. I bought lots of comic books when I was young.
You ever been to the comic book store here in Spartanburg?
No, I have not.
We were Tangled Web. They actually just got a little bit nicer of a location. It's a good place.
Oh, really?
Check it out. Yeah.
I've got a collection out there in the garage. There's only one comic book series that I've ever cared about. When I was a little kid, it was a short-lived. They only did 23 or 24 issues, and I have all of them now. Short-lived series called Shogun Warriors. It was about these gigantic robots piloted by 3 human pilots.
Okay, so
that,
like the
save the Earth from interstellar
what's the
villains.
name? There's
and all
a
that
name
stuff.
for that started in Japan, and they have a name for it. It's basically turned into Power Rangers now.
Yeah.
For that category
I'm
of like
loath
people
to reference anything by Haim Sabin, but okay.
people in giant robot suits fighting kaiju or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But this was the predecessor to it. This was the 1970s.
Right.
And
I can't remember.
I remembered reading all of those when I was a little kid, and then in the mid 90s, there was a comic book store up in Kalamazoo. That's Michigan, if you remember from earlier in the podcast where you asked me where I was from. Kalamazoo, Michigan. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet.
Whereabouts is that?
That's in southwest Michigan, the other side of the state from Detroit. And halfway in between is a little town called Jackson, noted for its state prison.
And what's right next
right to the southwest of that is a little town called Spring Harbor, which is where I went to school.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But anyways, this comic book store in Kalamazoo had, by an act of God or something, had all the issues.
Okay.
Right there.
All like 24.
All together. Just happened to have all of them.
Was there like
an
avid
bought
reader?
them all.
Was someone there like a enthusiast of it?
I think Stan Lee remembers the Shogun Warriors because he was like the executive director. And I remember it. And that might be it.
Okay.
Herb Trimpe was the artist. I don't know why I would remember Herb Trimpe after all these years. But he was always the one credited, for the artwork. I think that might have been Herb Trimpe too.
Huh.
But anyway, Stan Lee, Herb Trimpe, and me might be the only people who remember this comic.
And who knows if Herb Trimpe's even still around.
Yeah, I know Stan Lee's still around. He makes a cameo in every one of his movies.
They filmed like his next, like 8 or 9 cameos.
Well, of course. He's like 103? I mean, they got to get these in now. I mean, he's
the Queen, or Betty White. Who's gonna?
Yeah, they got to.
Who's going first?
They got to wheel him in on like a 2-wheel dolly. I mean, he's getting up there. He was old when I was reading comic books.
Yeah. Did he always wear the sunglasses too?
Oh,
still
always. And always finished every one of his little editorial things in the back of the comics. The last word in every one of those was Excelsior.
Like the New York State seal?
No, that was just kind of his thing. It was like saying, goodbye, see you next time, whatever. He would always say Excelsior.
Right.
And then back in the late 70s and early 80s when they were making Saturday morning cartoons out of Marvel Comics characters and things, they would always have his voice at the end kind of wrapping up the episode, and he would always sign off with Excelsior.
That's pretty cool.
I feel so old.
So, are you just
motorcycle
have those? Okay, motorcycles. Yep. So you had the dirt bike.
Yep, had the dirt bike.
Did you build a motorcycle?
No. Had the dirt bike as a kid, and then went to college. Well, let me back up. Had the motorcycle as a little kid, then discovered girls, then went to college. And all things considered, girls are better than motorcycles, but only by a little bit.
Okay.
So went off to college, really discovered girls in college.
But let's look at that
and
comparison
had
sheet.
A big, kind of a big blank spot, and then came back to motorcycles after Mrs. Kitchen and I got married.
So between motorcycles and girls, if you're comparing and contrasting the like pros and cons lists, like what makes the girls just edge out the motorcycles?
You ever try to sleep with a motorcycle?
No, I have not. But I gotta, I guess, love interest can be a lot of hard work.
If I have to explain to you why this works, that might be beyond the scope of this podcast.
But why is it so close? Like, you'd think girls would far outweigh a motorcycle.
I can fix a motorcycle.
That's true. You can make it to your specifications.
Yes, a motorcycle doesn't give me a hard time. A motorcycle doesn't get upset when I go ride another motorcycle.
That's true. That's true. So when did you get your next bike?
Oh, must have been about
we're gonna edit down. So
2008, 7, 8, something like that. That was at a point where Mrs. Kitchen and I had come to a realization in our marriage that we had quit having fun together. It's funny. And I think it happens to most marriages. You go through a phase where, when you first get married, everything's wonderful and you're really into each other and all that stuff. And then the honeymoon wears off around, I don't know, about 6 months into the wedding. But you get to a point where the newness has worn off, and now you're in that phase of learning how to be married to each other. And there came a point when we realized that we had quit having fun together. It was kind of like we had gone from being lovers to being business partners in the business of running our family together. And we had just quit doing stuff to have fun together, to get back to those roots of, the 10 years that we knew each other before we got married. And so one night, laying in bed, staring up at the ceiling in the dark, kind of like an idiot, I just blurted out in the darkness, "How do you feel about getting a motorcycle?" I didn't even know if she was awake or not. And the voice from the darkness said, "Okay." So we went out and got a motorcycle and started riding together, and that got us back to a place where we were going out and having fun
put a
together.
Camper on the back and go across the country?
No, the to me at least, the whole point of riding on a motorcycle is to get away from all that stuff. I don't get on the bike so that I can take it all with me. I get on the bike to get away from it. And, again, I'm always that lone wolf kind of guy. I travel light. She and I have not gone cross-country yet together. We got a few more years. We got to get the boys out of the house.
But y'all are going to do that. That's on the list.
Oh, yeah. The summer after the second child leaves the house, the tentative plan is going to take about 3 to 6 months. And just ride around North America, U.S. and Canada.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I've got about 18, I think, states under my belt myself on the bike. That sound about right?
I need to get on. My grandmother has all 50. I've always thought that's so cool. I've
been in every state in the lower 48 except for 2 in a truck. I spent a number of years as a commercial truck driver.
Spending a night and staying there. That's something I want to do in all 50. It needs to be done. Anybody who has the opportunity and has the resources to do that should do themselves a favor and do that.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's one of those things that everybody should do, quite honestly, before they get married. Take a gap year, as they call it in Europe, and just travel.
I worked in my gap year. I'm going back to school this August, but I just worked.
We live in a big nation, and a lot of people don't stop to think about the geographical size of things. You realize that the United States is about physically the same size as Australia?
Thereabouts, yeah.
It's bigger than Europe.
Oh.
All of the countries in Europe. You'd have to take all of Europe and most of the stands, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Sankrakistan, as my sister calls it, all the other stands. You add all of that land mass together, now you're getting close to the size of the U.S. So, but because we live in the U.S., we consider that part of our backyard, and therefore it's not interesting. And nobody wants to see it because, that's the U.S. and I live in the U.S.
Have you been to Montana?
Well, you're making my point for me. I spent a number of years driving long haul as a truck driver.
I've always thought about that. There's one way to travel if
It was something I did
as other ways to do it.
Yeah, it was something I did as a young single man because I realized I hadn't been much out of the Midwest at that point in my life, except for the Carolinas. And I wanted to see. I was young, single. What did I have holding me down? Nothing. Oh, God.
There's a lot of corn.
Iowa.
Iowa, Illinois.
Let me describe Iowa for you, okay? Imagine you're on Interstate 80 and you're heading west. Council Bluffs. Corn, a tree. Corn, Des Moines.
Des Moines' cool, though. I like Des Moines.
Corn, another tree. Corn, Iowa City. That's Iowa.
That's Iowa.
Yep.
Yep. And there's some other, like, Illinois is like that. There's outside of Chicago.
Southern Illinois is different. Southern Illinois is actually quite hilly,
really,
very granity. You realize Metropolis is in Southern Illinois. Metropolis, as in the home of Superman.
The city, the big city Metropolis.
There is a city Metropolis.
Huh. I thought Metropolis was the big city, and then like Superman, like his hometown was like this little.
I'm just telling you that there's a city in Illinois called Metropolis.
Okay.
And they're very proud of the fact that they're named Metropolis, and they even tell everybody who comes in there that that's the home of Superman.
Home of Superman. That's pretty cool. Also a great film. Go watch Metropolis.
Well, yeah, that whole little area of southern Illinois, and then going across the lake, across the river into, doggone it, what's the name of that town in Missouri? It's Rush Limbaugh's hometown. I just alienated half your listeners. And then
this isn't live. We can edit.
Western Tennessee, that whole little Piedmont, that little triad area right there, is actually
Ozarks,
quite
Missouri,
beautiful. Well,
cool.
The Ozarks are the other side of Arkansas.
Arkansas and Missouri. Okay.
Yeah.
What's that? Is that like Appalachia sort of?
Oh, that's gorgeous. You know, the only thing bad about Western Arkansas is that it's full of Arkansans. But other than that, well, and it's like California, too. The only thing bad about California is that it's full of Californians.
We're talking about Southern California here. Northern California.
Well, that's true. That's true. You make a solid point. I had a friend named Larry Tully.
Bay Area down, they're cool.
Sacramento and south. Okay, I had a friend named, years ago, his name was Larry Tully. Actually, his name was Larry Tully his whole life, not just years ago. But Larry lived in Fort Jones? Yeah, Fort Jones, California, way up near the Oregon border. And he was a crusty old curmudgeon, which is why I liked him. You know, he had kind of a, you know who Sam Elliott is?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had kind of a Sam Elliott kind of tone to his voice, and that kind of slower, very deliberate demeanor to him. And I remember he was very intent on explaining to me that people from Northern California are not to be confused with people from Southern California, because
that's very true.
Well, one day he told me, well, I'll tell you right now, those people from Southern California, they're a bunch of damn crazies. And unless you want to get your ass beat, don't confuse Northern Californians with Southern Californians.
Solid.
Yeah, and he was the one who told me that the dividing line is Sacramento.
Sacramento.
Yeah. So, yeah, the San Francisco Bay Area, Sacramento, everything south of there is rubbish.
I like the Bay Area.
It's nice to look at, but I've been through there enough times that, see,
the weather.
To me, nothing ruins beautiful scenery like filling it full of people.
The feel, like the air, it's so nice. You have no AC bill. Heating and air bill doesn't exist there. It's just so that...
You get 5 miles inland, and then you got a heat and AC bill.
Perfect temperature in Oakland and Bay Area the whole time.
One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And the benefit of my years spent driving over the road as a trucker was that I now know all the places I want to go back and see on a motorcycle. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen is Redding, California. absolutely gorgeous. It's, if I told you to imagine in your mind a Rocky Mountain lake.
Like a Bob Ross painting.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, if Bob Ross was going to paint for you a picture of the Rocky Mountains with a lake in it, put a strip of highway down the middle of it, that's Redding, California.
All right, solid.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I like Jackson.
And my other favorite,
like
Jackson, Michigan, where the state prison?
Wyoming.
Oh, Wyoming. Oh, okay. Well, that's different.
With the mountain and the lake and the Tetons.
And Redding is one of my favorite places in the country from a scenery standpoint. The other one is Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. That's way up. You know how Idaho gets really long and skinny at the top between Washington and Montana?
I've been to Boise and I've been to Idaho Falls. That's about it.
If you're in Seattle, you get on Interstate 90 and you head east, like you're heading to Montana.
Through the mountains.
Yeah, over the mountains, like you're heading to Montana. You get to the long, skinny point of Idaho, which is only like 40 miles across.
Yep.
It's not seriously. It's only like 40 miles across.
I'm envisioning
seriously.
the Iowa Vandals helmet.
Yeah. Cool. Well, right in the middle of that is Coeur d'Alene.
And what's so cool about that place?
It's just gorgeous. It's just
scenery?
so. Oh yeah, that's all. You're still that's Rocky Mountains, dude. Yeah. It's just so idyllic, and the only thing that's bad about Coeur d'Alene, Idaho now, is that all the rich people from Southern California learned about it.
Huh.
And it drives the Coeur d'Alene natives nuts. Because just like towns in Montana, all the rich people from Southern California have come up and bought all the property, and now you can't get a one-bedroom apartment for under $3,500 a month.
No. I do need to go out that. I've been out that way a few times, Montana and Wyoming especially. I've spent a decent amount of time in Wyoming. Utah is probably one of the prettiest states I've ever been to.
That is another very nice place.
Southern
Utah.
Southern Utah.
The Painted Rocks
area
and stuff.
You get St. George, and then you've got like Moab, which is cool. It's a little more grassy, but not Moab. Uray's a little more grassy, but Moab's got Canyonlands and the Arches. And
all that
wonderful.
area between Moab and northern Arizona, like from Moab to Flagstaff, Arizona.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
All that area in
Sedona,
there is
Arizona,
it's just gorgeous.
Flagstaff, I went up that. It was summer, and I went up there, and there was snow on the top. I thought that was it's way up there.
Oh yeah, years ago, I was coming from Enterprise, Utah, and I only remember it because it's the name Enterprise, and I'm a Star Trek fan. Coming down through Flagstaff down to Phoenix, and I remember it was 5 degrees below zero, snow up to your armpits in Flagstaff, and we had to be escorted by police down the mountain because it was so treacherous. So they had the state police out there, and they were only taking 4 cars at a time down the mountain. It's only hub miles. It's 35, 40 miles from Flagstaff to the bottom of the mountain.
Right.
And you're almost in Phoenix. 5 degrees below zero in Flagstaff, snow up to your armpits. You get to Phoenix, at 11 o'clock at night, it was still 85 degrees.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you ever go through Sedona?
Once or twice.
There's nothing like that.
Yeah, it is gorgeous area.
Goodness.
That's why I say, just because we live in the U.S. doesn't mean that people shouldn't go see the U.S.
You have to.
We have more geographical variety than just about any nation on this earth has a right to.
I agree with that.
I'm also a big fan of the Desert Southwest and the Texas Hill Country. That's some of my favorite area in this country.
Like Lubbock?
Well, that's Lubbock
a little
itself
too flat
is,
for my taste.
Lubbock is a little too oil fieldy for me.
There's a great saying, you can stand on a fish and watch your dog run away for hours. Because of how flat it is.
I don't know where you've heard that phrase, but I'm going to have to write that down.
That is a saying about Lubbock. You can stand on a fish and watch your dog run away for hours. Gotta be my favorite. Yeah.
I like it. I lived in Austin, Texas for a year.
I like Austin.
And, the area.
It's a weird city.
Southwest and southwest of Austin, heading down towards the Mexico border, you're getting into what they call the hill country.
Okay.
Out there. And that's its own unique area. That's one of my favorite places in this country. I took a solo trip on the motorcycle through the hill country. And boy, that is remote. There are some places out there in the hill country that are so far out in the sticks that they got to have their sticks imported from the next town. That's how far out in the sticks they are. There was one time I remember coming over the crest of this hill in the hill country, aptly named. And, as I crested the hill, you'd see everything kind of open up. This huge valley, desert valley opening up in front of you. I pulled off on the side of the road, and it was a stretch of road where they had cut the road through a granite cliff to to make the crest a little easier. And so I went around and walked up the top of the granite cliff so I could get a better view and take a picture. And it was really beautiful, and I must have stood there for, I don't know, a half hour, just kind of taking it all in before I realized that I had been standing there for a half hour and hadn't seen another person. And then
you don't get that sensation.
For just a brief moment, I was a little bit freaked out because I thought, it might not be the world's best idea for me to be climbing up this granite cliff in the desert with rattlesnakes and things like that, because if I break my leg, if I get bit, something, I'm screwed. I haven't seen another person for a half hour here, and the last town I saw was 40 miles back that way. Yep. So for just a brief moment, I thought, all right, maybe I better keep going. But even still,
it's an interesting sensation.
The solitude, I really love the solitude of it. And the only other time that I've ever had that particular feeling was in New Mexico in a place called the Kilburn Hole. You've ever heard? Or you look like you were shaking your head like you've heard of that before. And the Kilburn Hole is a meteor crater.
Oh, the big, okay, yeah.
And you want to talk about being 40 miles from nowhere. I had a friend who he was a lecturer at University of Texas in El Paso. And he was a herpetologist by trade. And so I was out visiting him one time, spent a few days out there, and he took me out to the Kilburn Hole because he said it was going to be a really neat place to find geodes. You know what I'm talking about?
The rocks with the amethyst or whatever inside.
The rocks where if you slice them in half, they're hollow inside and all crystalline and all that stuff. So we were going to go out to the Kilburn Hole and go geode hunting. So we're out there driving, and we're down by the Mexico border. They're the only other people that are going to be out there are the Border Patrol. Once a day or something.
It's just a big hole.
So we went down. We finally, you can't see it. I mean, it's a hole.
Yeah.
You're driving around and it's just flat desert until you almost fall into a crater.
Right.
And we got out of the truck, and he's got his snake gear with him, snake tongs and a snake bag and all that stuff. And we went hiking down into the Kilburn Hole.
Is it hot down in there?
It's the desert Southwest.
But like down in the hole, I bet it'd be.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very hot. And we walked down in there, and at one point, Alan, my friend, says to me, "Stop for a second." And we stopped, and he said, "Just be as quiet as you can." And here we're probably 50 feet below the ridge line of the crater. And I've never heard quiet like that in my lifetime. It was so quiet, it was like suddenly somebody had punctured my eardrums. I mean, if you held your breath, you couldn't hear anything. And that was the only other time in my life that I've suddenly kind of gotten that feeling where maybe this wasn't the smartest idea I've ever had. You know, because if I break my leg out here, if I break my leg and then Alan breaks his leg, we're going to die here because nobody's going to be looking for us here.
Where was I? I was out, I was in North Carolina, Western North Carolina. There's like a NASA observatory up there.
Where?
It's near Asheville. It's near one of the colleges.
Oh, okay.
They got a NASA observatory, and they do some studies with sound and acoustics up there. And they have this box room, and it's just,
anechoic chamber.
yeah, it's just a room with just completely foam padded and soundproofed. And you go inside, and they close the door, and they turn on their little thing that cancels the noise, and it is so quiet. Like it's almost disorienting.
It's almost unnervingly quiet.
It's unnervingly quiet, and it's disorienting, and it's like, number one, it's pitch black dark. Like they black out all the light, so there's no.
So it's like a sensory deprivation kind of thing.
Minus the salt water.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was an interesting sensation. They say, like, you know, it freaks some people out when they go in there. They have like nervous breakdown.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But that's interesting. That sensation is just to have no sound at all.
Well, that's pretty close to what being in the bottom of the Kilburn Hole was like. You know, we spent an afternoon down there and had fun and everything, but after we left, I remember thinking,
like a little, like, visitor center down up at the top.
There's nothing there.
Why wouldn't they? It's a giant.
It's out in the middle of the desert.
Though,
I mean,
it's like a cool. It's a big giant hole. How cool is that?
Well, you know, to people that are interested in big giant holes, it's really awesome.
It is
but
really
you know,
awesome.
But to the rest of the general population, it's just a big giant hole.
But I mean, this is a thing that came hurtling through outer space, and you know, this thing was. I mean, it wasn't the size of the thing that killed the dinosaurs, but it was a big ass rock.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. That's why I think it's interesting, and I've always had kind of a. I don't know that I would want to move to the desert Southwest, but it's one of those places where I've always kind of felt like I have a little bit of almost kind of a spiritual kinship with. And I think it goes back to the first time that I had spent any time out there. I was a young man, was going through a point in my life where I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just kind of out there, just kind of wandering through life, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, who I was. And I think that there was something about wandering around in the desert. Maybe it's kind of a, biblical thing, like the Israelites wandering through the desert or something, that there's just kind of a spiritual resonance kind of thing for me with the desert.
I've never, and this is a weird, like, the desert's very pretty to look at. It's very pretty to be in. I don't think I could be there. The air feels empty.
Dries out your sinuses.
Dries out your sinuses, and you get nosebleeds or whatnot. But you don't, like, if you go into the woods here or in Pisgah National Forest, where you have like the birds singing in the trees and the rustle of the leaves, like, I like that. I've always liked that. And the water, the sound of a river or something like that. So I usually shoot for places like that, like forest, or I'll go to Maine or something like that.
Well, like I said, it's not the kind of I don't think I'd want to build a home out in the desert, but it's one of those places where, and I think that's part of what I like about the Texas Hill Country, was that it's desert enough and it's remote enough that I've learned in my life that I'm almost classic introvert. Even though I'm outgoing by nature, and what I do for a living requires me to be sociable and outgoing and all that, my batteries are recharged by solitude and quiet. And I think that's part of the allure of the desert for me, is just that isolation, that removal from all of the cares of the world. And the desert isn't a place that most people want to go to. The people who want to go to the desert are a little bit left.
It sucks out life.
Oh no, it is absolutely not lifeless.
Well, okay, no. I know it's teeming with life, and yes, we can get into ecosystems, but it's harsh.
Harsh, I'll agree with.
It is harsh. It is unforgiving. It is harsh. And the life has to adapt to that in a much tougher way.
It's very do or die.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you that. You know, if you're not adapted to it, if you don't know what you're doing,
It'll kill you.
It can kill you. That's for sure. But like I said, I don't know that I want to build a house there, but it's a great place for me to go to get my batteries recharged.
I could see that the therapeutic properties of that.
But then we can bring all this back around full circle, and I can tell you that I've been in every one of the lower 48 states except for South Dakota and Vermont.
I was about to say, if you like desert, the Badlands of South Dakota's Badlands would.
Haven't gotten out there. I had a chance back in 2001 to go to South Dakota, and a big storm system was rolling through, and I thought, no, I'll just go through North Dakota. I'll get another chance. And I never got another chance again. But I've been in just about every state in the U.S., but when I think about, it's time to go home,
mm-hmm.
this ends up being the place that I think about when I think
nice.
about home, even though I wasn't born here, even though I was embedded with Yankees for
Where was that
38
again?
years. It was in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, on the other side of the state from Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, right
What's
off
in between
I-94. Yeah, there's a little town called Jackson, mostly noted for its state prison.
Okay.
But when I think about, where's home for me, where's that heart connection, oddly enough, it's always been here in the upstate.
Okay.
With a possible dual citizenship in Central Texas.
All right.
I got an honorary Texan certificate one time. I got 2 native-born Texans to sign off on me and say that I was a person of good character.
It was a great article I read. It was like an Onion article, but it was about this Marine who got harassed and bullied when his squad mates or whatever found out that he was from Texas, and they were like, well, how come you haven't been telling people this whole time you're from Texas and shoving it in their face that you're from Texas? You have to do that. That's part of being from Texas, is you have to let people know you're from Texas. You never had.
I'll tell you what, man. Texans, if I didn't live here in the upstate, I would live in Central Texas.
They love their Texas.
Yeah, I lived there for a year before I got married. And native-born Texans are a neat bunch of people.
They're neat.
I gotta give them mad props. They take that whole Lone Star Pride thing
to the next
seriously.
Level. Very,
very seriously.
The United States of Texas.
Yeah, exactly. And they're very much proud of the fact that they've got enough natural resources, enough geography, they've got a strong enough military. They could pretty much just kind of go, okay, it was a nice run. We're going to go ahead and do our own thing now.
They could.
And
they really could.
Pretty much life wouldn't change a whole lot.
How would college football, would they still be allowed to play in the NCAA?
Well, I don't know, every once in a while, don't we send an NFL team up to Canada for exhibitions or something?
We send England.
Yeah, we'll just call it an exhibition game.
Clemson played Wake Forest in Japan. So.
Really?
Oh, yeah, back in the 70s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have a program from it somewhere when we played in a bowl game in Japan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's really the only topic I'm afraid to discuss out loud is I'm not a Clemson fan.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
but you can't count us out. You got to go experience.
No, I mean I got to give you credit. It's a good program.
You're this close to it. You got to go check it out once.
I have to get over my phobic aversion to large groups of people.
Well, 85,000 is a lot, but
yeah.
So is 109. So, and you've been in 109.
That's true. Well, it's more than that now. What are they up to?
It's
about
120? No. A big house at this point is 109,500.
I think we got to get the fact checker in on this one. I think
Google machine say?
Yeah, that's Google is your friend. Except I don't have my friend next to me here.
Last I read, it was 109.
I was pretty sure. Well, I think that was the original seating in the bowl was 109. But there's been all sorts of construction now.
The sky boxes and stuff.
Yeah, they got VIP boxes and all that stuff.
Why don't they build up a second? I mean, they really could build up a second tier and easily make it 130 140,000.
All right. Let's see. Google says 109,901.
You know what the one is, right? The story behind the one? It's like there's like some, instead of having it 109,900, they put the one there for like some famous person or notable.
No, I didn't. I would have just assumed it was like, why is your food always $9.95?
That's true.
Because it sounds a lot cheaper than $10.
That's true.
What's
with
109,901 sounds more impressive than 109,900.
That's true. What's with Michigan's love affair of Slippery Rock?
Slippery Rock?
Yeah, they always announce the Slippery Rock football score at Michigan Stadium. Always, without fail.
Well, I'm going to have to turn in my Michigan card here. I don't have a freaking clue what you're talking about.
I need to research that because I've heard about this and I'm intrigued by it.
I mean, I know the Little Brown Jug. I know that, I'm contractually obligated to hate Ohio State, even though one of my good friends is a graduate of the Ohio State University, and he never lets me forget it's the Ohio State University.
And you're that team up north.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that we like to make fun of Michigan State a lot because
they're a little brother.
Well, why not? Yeah, they're the redheaded stepchild. Yeah,
Yep.
And they don't have any rivalries. If we weren't around, they wouldn't have anybody to hate. Okay, we're getting word from the official show fact checker.
The one extra seat in Michigan Stadium is said to be reserved for Fritz
Chrysler, athletic director at the time.
Huh.
Oh, okay. Since then, all official Michigan Stadium capacity figures have ended in 01, although the exact location of the seat isn't specified.
Can you Google Michigan Slippery Rock? Because I'm really, really intrigued by this. I think they even brought Slippery Rock into Big House, not to play against Michigan, because I think they're like D3 or something, but to play a game in the Big House because of this weird love affair that they have.
Oh, you got me on that one. I don't know the Slippery Rock reference whatsoever.
I love like obscure college football.
The official show fact checker here.
There's a
Google is your friend.
My favorite.
This show
trophy.
Brought to you by Google.
Right, exactly. This show brought to you by Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Which is on the other side of the state from Detroit.
Did
you know that?
I did. Also brought to you by Big Holes in the Ground. And Hill Country.
And Texas Hill Country.
Texas Hill Country.
Slippery Rock, formerly known as the Rock, but colloquially known as the Pride, is the... and he's scrolling too fast for me to see.
I'm trying to find the thing. Harry Snyder. I wonder if he's related to Bill Snyder. And then his coaches, but we're traditions.
Oh, okay.
The announcing of the Slippery Rock score is a tradition at the University of Michigan football games. The tradition began in 1959. By Michigan Stadium announcer Steve Filippic. That's Filiplak? I don't know. That's the name.
The Rock, located just outside of the east end zone of the stadium, was donated by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1995, and the players rub the Rock every time they take to the field prior to each home game.
So, well, that's funny.
So that must be like those yahoos at Notre Dame smacking the sign above the door as they head out of the locker room.
Like a champion. When was your last championship, Notre Dame? Notre Dame has not won a game in January since I think like 92.
Isn't the last time that Notre Dame was important to anybody when Rudy Rudiger went to school there?
No.
I mean, they're kind of like, they're riding the Rudy Rudiger coattail a little hard, I think.
Lou Holtz.
It's a good thing I'm down here in South Carolina because
I guess they won.
Because there's nothing more frightening than a bunch of rabid Indiana people running across the border at you.
Touchdown, Jesus! Touchdown, Jesus!
Yeah, you've seen Braveheart, right?
Right. It's like that when.
Yeah, imagine that set in northwest Indiana.
That's Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
They're only important when they're playing Miami. That's about it.
Well, we were talking about college rivalries earlier and how Michigan State doesn't have any. This isn't going to be widely listened to in Michigan, is it? Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, good.
If we're lucky, it will.
Because I'm in big trouble. You're not going to like put my address in the show notes for this or anything, are you?
Face, address, social security, anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's got it all.
Yeah, another one of the big rivalries. Well, at least it
Notre
used
Dame,
to be. Michigan.
Well,
not Michigan State. Michigan and Notre Dame.
Michigan and Notre Dame's been a big one, and they're trying to bring it back.
But it's kind of lost its luster. But really,
well, they played the Under the Lights. That was the big thing because Michigan had their Under the Lights game, their first night games, where they wore the horrible uniforms.
Yeah, they are horrible.
And they had the Under the Lights game, and they beat Notre Dame in this crazy game. And I thought it was so cool because ESPN cut back 20 minutes after the game was over. Nobody had left the stadium. They were just trying to soak up this experience of being in the big house at night and how crazy it was. I thought that was so cool.
Fun fact. The very first time I went by the big house, I didn't even know it. Because it's below ground level.
You just see this thing and you're like,
I didn't even know it. I was driving all through campus, and going, where the heck is the big house? And it was only later that I found out. I went by it like 4 times, and the only reason you know it's there is because there's a big archway.
Big old M, yeah. Scoreboard and whatnot. But
and I thought it was just like an archway welcoming you to the University of Michigan campus. Nope, that's where the big house is.
The big house. Yeah. Michigan State and Notre Dame has had some good games. They had the Little Giants game where Michigan State's coach beat Notre Dame on a trick play that he had inspired from the movie The Little Giants.
I don't think I've seen that movie.
What
was the trick play? Well, it was Statue of Liberty, something goofy?
It's called the annexation of Puerto Rico.
Okay. Explain.
Go watch the movie The Little Giants. I call it the annexation of Puerto Rico. It's a great play. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the Little Giants game. That's a great game.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I'm showing my age now because I'm starting to sound like all those people that I thought were old when I was in my teens and 20s.
Was a great.
Because I sit back and I think, well, back in my day we had Bo Schembechler.
Pepperidge Farms remembers.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, we walked 10 miles to school, uphill, both ways.
Uphill, both ways.
Here's another fun fact for you. I went to the same high school that my mother did.
Okay.
So, for years, when I was a little kid growing up, I used to remember how, my mother, God rest her soul, when she would want to make sure that I understood how good I had it in life and how rough she had it. She used to tell me stories about how she had to walk.
Was your mother a depression child?
How old do you think I am?
My
grandmother was a depression child.
My grandparents
How old do I look to you?
My grandparents were depression children. You could be my father. I'm adopted.
And see, we were having such a nice little family podcast, and now I'm going to have to beat him senseless.
I'm just saying.
And in my own home and at my own kitchen table. And here I was thinking such nice thoughts about you. But anyways, we were talking about my mother before you so rudely insulted me.
And where was this high school?
This was Parchment, Michigan. It was a suburb of Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is on the west side of the state, the opposite side of the state from Detroit. And she used to tell me, no joke, I heard it for years and I never let her live it down. We used to hear these stories, my sisters and I, about how my mother had to walk 3 miles to school, and it was uphill both ways. And in the wintertime, she had nothing but a baked potato to keep her hands warm, and then she had to eat the baked potato for lunch at the school, and then so her hands were cold when she would walk back home. It was uphill both directions, mind you. And I used to hear all of these horror stories, and then we moved to Parchment. And I lived for a number of years in a house just 10 houses down the street from the house that my mother grew up in.
You said, I'm going to walk to school.
And I measured it, and it was only 3/4 of a mile, not 3 miles, not 5 miles, not 13.5 miles, depending on which version of the story you heard from my mother. And it was only uphill in one direction.
I don't believe
the
it.
The other direction, it was downhill.
That doesn't make sense.
The laws of physics are strange in western Michigan. Kalamazoo is an odd little town.
And on that, I think it's a good time to wrap it up.
On that bombshell.
That'll do it for us. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Ethan Lyles. Please tune in again for more of the Northwest Corner podcast next week.